For a session presented by Visa, please welcome the Global Head of Merchant Sales and Acquiring at Visa, Jenny Mundy, in discussion with Skift Branded Content Editor, Darren Free.
Hey, Darren.
Hi, Jenny.
Hello, Darren.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's lovely to be here.
So, the pace of travel has been picking up, as we've been talking about, both domestically and internationally. Travelers are looking for digital solutions to make their journeys more seamless. And so I'm wondering, with Visa's visibility into consumer booking patterns, what kinds of expectations and behaviors are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's been talked about a lot already this morning, and we're definitely seeing travel coming back strongly, although it is a bit of a mixed game depending on which region of the world you look at. The US is coming through strongly, and Asia, as we all know, is still yet to come. We see Asia at about 60% of the levels it was in 2019. But one thing's for sure, the silver lining, I think, in COVID has been the amazing push of digitization. We've heard many people talk about that as well today. And not only digitization and the way that we're prepared now to live our lives, but the rise of contactless, for example, as well, which has really changed.
Yeah. You mentioned contactless. I know, travelers have faced so much friction this year, whether from canceled or delayed flights, ongoing health and safety issues, or protocols. What are some of the newest ways that contactless tools and technologies can be used to create better and more efficient experiences for travelers?
I mean, the first thing I should just point out is that contactless through COVID went through a rapid change right the way around the world. So levels in a lot of the world, so I live and work out of London, you can probably tell by my accent. At the beginning of COVID, the limit on contactless payments was £30. At the end of COVID, we'd moved it up to £100, and that pattern has happened all the way around the world. And of course, we're now seeing contactless penetration in most countries sticking around about the 70%. And now in the US, it's about 20%. Overall, we see sort of 24%. But I think one key point as well is, yes, I talk about the limits on contactless, but of course, if you use it through your smartphone wallet, because you've got another factor of authentication, which is your thumbprint effectively, then that's limitless because you've already authenticated. So, and that has really started to transform, I think, the way that we can live and work and what we're used to, the different ways and a simpler way of paying. Transit is a great example. So the subway here in New York is now contactless, and I think that's been a really big tipping point. We saw the same thing in London when the tube went contactless, and that then ripples out into retail as well. And it gives people a lot of confidence. I mean, if I travel and I can get off a plane or a train or however I'm getting there, and I need to get a taxi or I want to get on a bus, and I know that I can just pay simply, I can get on and pay with my card, pay with my phone. And I know it's going to be secure, and it's something I trust and I have confidence in. It just removes one extra barrier, and I think that's the sort of transformation we're seeing as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really interesting about the limits on I didn't realize that about the limits that you mentioned. For business travel, I know business travel is also coming back, more slowly than leisure travel, but it is coming back. And I know Visa has a virtual card solution for businesses. Mm-hmm. Can you just walk us through the benefits of virtual cards? How do they drive operational improvements for businesses and also improve the front-end customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, virtual cards, for those who don't sort of know what a virtual card is, so instead of a real piece of plastic, you just get it sent to you virtually, so it's there on your device, typically your phone. And you can use it like a normal card, and obviously, not having the plastic is one benefit already. But there's a couple of ways that we use virtual cards, or we see virtual cards being used. The first is as a business. So if you have employees and they're starting to travel, and you don't want to give them a plastic card, perhaps, but you can issue them with a virtual corporate card. And that corporate card can have guardrails on it. So for example, it could only work in certain category codes. So if you want people to be able to spend in restaurants, hotels, but not in various other elements, then you can make that happen, which stops people inadvertently using a card where perhaps they shouldn't be, and then all the admin overhead of trying to reverse that or whatever. So that's one way, and I think increasingly we're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm for cards like that. And obviously it's one less thing to lose, right? And that's also important when we travel. The second way is in the online travel agencies in the background, if you like. If I go on as a consumer and I book maybe 3 or 4 different things, then in the back, that online travel agent has then got to back that off into all those providers. And that could be a small hotel, it could be a tour operator, it could be a multiple of those. And again, you can use virtual cards in the back to make all of those payments. And that does a few different advantages. Reconciliation becomes easier. Not a particularly sexy thing, but a really important thing to get right. And also the risk and the fraud levels are much, much lower. So I think some real benefits as well of using it behind the scenes.
Yeah, for a lot of businesses that are, sort of more slowly getting back into business travel, it seems like a great way just to have a way to control costs.
Yeah.
So speaking of businesses, let's focus in on the travel business. We have a captive audience of travel leaders here today. How should we all be thinking about payments, digitization, the customer experience to capitalize on this moment?
I think it was really interesting sitting here this morning and listening to the Booking.com talk about the vision of the connected journey. So I think when we think about payments, payments need to be right at the heart and center of any of that customer experience and design. They need to be there at the right point in that. They can't be an afterthought. They need to be embedded deeply, deeply within it. And we're seeing lots of great examples of that. So, Alaska Airlines, for example, where you can book online the food and beverages or whatever you want on the airline. It's all done off a tablet on the plane. It makes it really nice and simple, again, for the consumers. Other things that we're seeing getting tackled are things like tipping. So in an age where we're getting more and more used to being digital and perhaps just don't carry cash, I'm trying to remember the last time I carried cash. I can't actually remember. But to have a tipping app, for example, is something else we're seeing. So a simple QR code, you can tip really easily with your digital device or your card. It makes things very, very simple. So I think thinking about how to transform those experiences, but putting payments right at the heart of it with the right amount of friction. If you buy a cup of coffee, you probably don't want any friction in that. Yeah. But if you buy a holiday, then you kind of want to know that you've bought the holiday, right? So I think it's thinking about it in the appropriate way to deliver a great experience.
Yeah, you don't want to just instantly buy the trip with, there should be a little friction. That's interesting. So yeah, it seems like this ability to manage the details of your trip and pay for your trip in the palm of your hand is almost the holy grail of travel right now. And so we're almost out of time, but I just have one last question. What challenges and opportunities for payments do you see on the horizon as we move into the next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the digital world and the changed consumer behavior are here to stay, and really embracing that is something I think that this industry does really well. I think some of the other exciting things that are coming are being able to actually turn your device into a POS, so you can actually take payments from your smartphone. And when you think about the number of small businesses there are in the world, but particularly in the travel sector as well, being able to sort of have your end customer pay on that device, I think that's something very exciting, and we're certainly seeing a lot of take-up from that and for that from a lot of the emerging markets around the world. So I think much to come. I think open banking in Europe is something to be interested and exciting about as well. I think that will throw up a lot of as yet unknown opportunities.
For those who may not know open banking, can you just describe exactly what that is?
So, sure. So the Payment Services Directive number 2, I think, is the exciting, memorable, proper name for it. But effectively, it was put out a few years ago by the EU. The real driver was to drive up security, but also to drive innovation and competition. And part of that has been increased security around the number of sort of one-time passwords that you need to authenticate. But also, it's opened up banking where, assuming people opt in, and the majority of people do and have, that the account information is available to all banks. So, for example, I can go online into my main bank and I can see all of my other accounts all pulled into a single place. Okay. That enables a whole stack of other use cases, like if you want to run some credit checking, should I give someone a credit card or not? The providers can effectively look at their whole credit history rather than just one single place. But the other thing it does is it also opens up for payment initiation in a much wider way. And we're yet to see that really take off, and the use cases are nascent, would be a polite way of putting it. But I think that's got real potential as well. So watch this space.
Yeah, no, there's so much going on in the payments world. Jenny, thank you so much for being with us today, and for flying all the way out from the UK.
It's a pleasure.
I hope your journey was seamless. Thanks, everyone. To learn more about Visa's global payment solutions, visit visa.com.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you.